Tell me what you were urging progressives to do in this election in swing states.
Well, the thing is, obviously, we're in a little disagreement, but I'm not telling people to not vote for Joe Biden. I'm telling people to vote for who you want to vote for. But what I've been doing a little bit of is just reminding people that Joe Biden is not your friend, and he...
Wait, that's true in many ways for progressives. Why are you telling them that at this moment? Why that rather than something else?
Well, only because people are talking about the election. And so those are just my comments on the election. And, I don't want 4 more years of Trump. I don't want 4 years of Joe Biden. But I understand that is the decision that we have.
Yeah.
And
given that choice, what should you do?
I say people should vote, especially in swing states, for whoever they think is better. I think they're...
Why vote if it makes no difference, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not saying that it makes no difference. And that's why I do encourage people to vote if they're, concerned about certain of the minor differences. And it is about minor differences at this point, relatively minor differences. Obviously, the Supreme Court picks, that's significant. That's always been significant. But the only reason why I'm not, enthusiastically supporting Joe Biden like I would be a Bernie Sanders presidency or a similar candidate is because of Joe Biden's background and my lack of trust with Joe Biden. And it really bothers it. It's just so clear to me that the Democrats, I just can't help but wonder. I can't help but wonder if one way to make people wake up is to see how if Joe Biden were to fail versus Donald Trump, might that help people wake up as to how terrible a strategy it is to run somebody like Joe Biden, who started the Iraq War, who wrote the Patriot Act, put him up against Donald Trump. Like, if you want to win elections, you need to offer people something significant, something meaningful to most people, not just among like partisan politics, but meaningful to everybody, which is like some security, healthcare, and, strongly anti-war. Joe Biden's not that candidate. So, Dr. Ellsberg, I vented to you a little bit about what you are, a military analyst. So go ahead and I may not like what your analysis is, but go ahead and what's your analysis?
Oh, wait, Matt. First, I was a military analyst 50 years ago. Okay. I know. When President Obama used to be called what was it? He was called a civic action leader or something like that. He'd been an organizer. That was a long time ago when we got him as president. That was way behind him. Let me ask you this, though. Why do you think Bernie Sanders is enthusiastically urging people to vote for Joe Biden? Why do you think he's doing that?
Because he does see him as a better choice for the following reasons. The Supreme Court picks, and honestly, that may be the only. So you could argue climate change. Unfortunately, it seems we're kind of screwed at this point. Joe Biden likes to take credit for the Paris Agreement, but there was nothing binding in that agreement. I think we're just screwed. And
Matt, can I say?
Yeah.
Do we have time here?
Yes.
3 hours. If you want, you can cut it all out.
No, I won't.
I'm not concerned on how you edit it. Let's talk. And I'm smiling here. I'm laughing because it's a chance to discuss with someone that I respect and whose work I admire. I've seen your other clips here. Very good stuff. I was really getting tired of interviews physically. But when I saw your clips, I thought, oh, this is a good one to be on. And I absolutely respect to discuss with someone like that where I think, and you're not by any means the only one, I just haven't had the chance, that I think you're terribly wrong. You're really wrong. See, and I would like to change your mind. I would
All
love
right.
if I had to change your mind. If I don't, so be it. All right. Here's what I would say. I mean, there's just lots of things to say. The first one, when you first don't include climate, and say then, well, maybe climate. Wait a minute. I don't expect Biden's plan to be close to being adequate to what this world needs. Greta Thunberg is quoting over and over what most scientists agree we need. 50% reduction in emissions by 2030. That's 10 years away. Total zero net emissions, and sometimes she says total any emissions, but total net emissions, zero by 2050. Okay? No country in the world is close, is in any way. By the way, the Paris Accords won't get that. So the Paris Accords, to start with, are not adequate for that. And they were even designed initially to limit us to a 2-degree rise in emissions, whereas the scientists are now saying, oh, catastrophic if it's more than 1.5 degrees. Is the world going to keep it down to the 1.5 degrees? I'll just say no for first approximation. How about 2 degrees? No, as far as I can see. When you talked about how much is baked in, nothing's certain. Miracles can and do happen, but it'll take a miracle for either of those goals to be done. No country in the world is behaving as to get there, first of all. And Paris, as I say, doesn't even get there. So is Joe Biden going to take on the oil companies to the extent that they are emitting net emissions by 2050 or 50% less in 10 years? Is that oil going to be kept in the ground by Joe Biden? No, I don't think so. Or by anybody else I can see in sight. Now, Bernie had a pretty good plan. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she with Markey and their Green New Deal plan, and so forth, they have a plan that is in the neighborhood of getting these emissions down. Okay? Biden has come very far in the direction of their plan in the last 6 months. His proposals and his thinking are much better now than a year ago. That maybe he doesn't carry it out. But his accessibility to these people, his listening to them, his being willing to change proposals on that direction is something you absolutely do not get with Trump. In other words, the notion of influencing as progressives what the president is doing is zero during, with Trump, I would say, while he's in office. But what's the alternative now? Is it a minor difference? Let me say it to you, Matt. We have a president who is maximizing the emission of maximizing with every instrument available to him, verbally and executive order and legislation and everything else. He is maximizing the rate of emissions of fossil fuel. I don't know what else he could do in the way of getting rid of regulations and of encouraging new exploration, new extraction, more fracking, more anything he could do to maximize that. We are increasing emissions, not reducing them. He is maximizing the rate of increase in emissions. We're going in the wrong direction. I'm not sure at all that Joe Biden will succeed in reducing the emissions. I mean, from where they are now. 4 years from now, we may be higher than we are now, but we won't be as high as under Trump. Absolutely. And the difference will be very great. Now, very great. No, you can shake your hand because I'm just asserting what I believe here. See? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I'm saying the humanity is in for a catastrophic, a terrible, disastrous change in our conditions of life coming in, and I don't think that will be avoided. And yet, there are degrees of catastrophe and how fast you get there and whether you've given yourself time to do anything in the future. I don't think humanity will recover from the marginal damage that 4 more years of Donald Trump gives to society, they won't recover for 1,000 years or more than that. In other words, if we get to 3 degrees instead of 2, which is not unlikely, 4 degrees, 5 degrees, every degree there, every half a degree, everything makes a difference. And that difference means we're never going to get back to where we were before. I say it is existential. People talk about existential. It's not existential for the human species. The human species will survive unless we get a Venusian runaway and get like Venus. And you know what would get us there? Burning all the known reserves will make us like Venus, that are owned, reserves that are owned. That's their intention. That's their business plan, the oil companies. They won't get there because civilization will have collapsed long before that, and they won't be extracting that oil. Won't be using the high technology, and they won't be burning it everywhere in the world. It'll have gone down. So I don't think we'll get to that. But the species will survive. Civilization as we know it, people say, will not survive that any more than they would survive nuclear winter. And that's what we're playing with here. So what I'm saying is the world cannot afford 4 more years of Donald J. Trump and this Republican Party. And that's why Noam Chomsky has been saying for years what sounds like inevitable hyperbole at first. He's been saying this Republican Party is the most dangerous political organization in the history of the world. Now, how could that be true? It is true. That is the truth. And so to say that there's only marginal differences here at stake, I put to you, Matt, my friend, is flat wrong. That's my case to start with.
Okay. Well, just so everyone understands,
an answer to that.
Sure.
Discussion. You don't have to use it in the end.
Oh yeah, no.
To have a discussion.
I'm happy to have a discussion. I have not.
I
have not pledged to not vote for Joe Biden. So I am open. I have not. Some people have pledged not to vote for at all, or I have not made that pledge. So I'm open to having my mind changed. But let me explain to everybody that the reason I doubt Joe Biden so strongly and his ability to do anything significant to save us from climate change is, under the Obama-Biden administration, fossil fuel production and emissions increased. It increased. So they were pro-environment, were concerned about climate change. They opened the arc to drilling.
Yes.
And
are you saying that you think there would be no significant difference to the world of 4 years of Biden with his advisors and 4 years of Trump? Is that what you believe?
I'm not happy to say this, but that is what I believe.
Well, a lot follows from that. I grant you, if you believe that. But, I think you haven't looked. I have to say, sorry. Mm-hmm. If Greta Thunberg could hear you.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what she does say? They give me prizes. This is a slight paraphrase. They give me prizes for having called millions of people into the streets, to protest this. But she says, what has happened? She said, the rate of emission is what matters, not how many people are in the streets.
Yes.
People are hearing me? Yes, she has had the chance to talk, amazingly, I'm amazed, to Davos and to others. She's gotten this audience. But she keeps her eye on the ball. And she says, as she says, being what is her malady that she shares, it seems, with Assange? Asperger's.
Oh, okay.
Asperger's. She says, we Aspies see things in black and white. And she's saying, I'm seeing this in black and white. And the black is emissions increasing, and white is emissions going down towards zero. That's the white. And she says, that isn't happening. That's the way she sees it. And she's absolutely right. Now, I can well believe they are going to go up. They're not going to reduce to the extent they should. Although, if he really follows the plan he has, or even better, if it goes in the direction of Bernie further, which it should, actually, we may keep this down to 2 degrees, or 1.5, or 2.5, or something. But you've got a man who has pledged in every example. You think it can't get worse? Your consciousness of Biden's shortcomings is so clear, and I'm not saying you overestimate his shortcomings at all. I agree with you 100%. I have not heard a left criticism of Biden that I don't share to the same degree. See, and I haven't heard it from you, and if you yet. And if you were to come up with a reason for not wanting Biden that I haven't heard and don't share, I'll be very interested. I will add it to my. But to say that Trump is not worse is, in my opinion, which a lot of people do, friends of mine and others. It may be shared it was shared unhappily, I think, by my friend Julian Assange in 2015, that he wouldn't be worse on balance. I think he was wrong. What Trump represents, and I'll say three things. I said only climate, democracy. His threat to democracy as of now is something, not that it's absolutely out of the blue, we've never seen anything like it, but it is more imminent and urgent than I think we've ever seen it. And third, as you say, the Supreme Court. And yet, that's not small. And yet, that may or may not be open to a Biden to do anything about. If he doesn't get Barrett now, it is of great importance that Trump not be elected. It is of extreme importance that you vote, that people who hate or despise Joe Biden vote for him, in swing states especially. And that people like you and me who have an audience, this is more important, tell people. So tell people to vote for Biden. You know, what you do in the privacy of your voting booth doesn't matter. That's the truth.
Especially because I live in Washington, D.C., Dan. So that's going Democrat no matter what.
Yeah. I think, by the way, Biden is for changing that, if I'm not mistaken, but that doesn't mean he'll get it. Okay, but I live in California. So I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I didn't need to keep Trump out. I wrote in Bernie Sanders, okay? When I told some other friends I'd done it, gee, why didn't I think of that, and so forth. But I'll tell you, I wasn't going to vote for Jill Stein because I saw Jill Stein as telling people, don't vote for Hillary Clinton. And a lot of them heard her and didn't do it for reasons that were good as far as they went in terms of policy and person. They either didn't vote or they voted green. And a surprising number voted for Trump. It turns out that about 12% of Bernie voters, I just read, voted for Trump. That's rather amazing. But another 12 or 13% didn't vote or voted green, 26% altogether.
In a similar amount, if not more, I believe an even larger amount than voted for green, voted libertarian, not from Bernie supporters, but in the general voting population.
I'm asking you. I don't really know. Were they otherwise Bernie voters?
No, actually. So that's a statistic I don't know. As far as the general voting population, more people voted for the libertarian Gary Johnson than for Jill Stein. Significantly more.
In our two-party system, we've now gotten into a new subject. Importance. But in our two-party system, I'm all for third parties on the right that take away votes from Republicans, give a chance, make an open road for Bernie or Alexandria or whoever, a real progressive, to get in as a Democrat. It's only third parties on the left that either have no effect or help elect a Republican, as in 2000 or 2016. That's the only electoral effect they can have in our system, and they have had it. Now, if there's no significant difference, then it doesn't matter, right? But the Tweedledum, Tweedledee that my former hero, Ralph Nader, who remains a hero for what he did before 2000, saying Tweedledum and Tweedledee was wrong. It was I can't believe that he fully believed that. It's very tempting for a third-party candidate to say that. It was wrong. I don't think we would have gotten Iraq under Gore. If we did, not a big difference.
Well,
we would have.
You gave me a lot to think about, but let me respond to some of it.
Yeah, sure.
So much to respond to. Just coming off of Nader, I think people today, even though that happened 20 years ago, people are still blaming the Green Party for Gore's loss. However, the Democrats played a huge role, and I would argue way more significant role in Gore's loss.
I don't want to prevent you from saying this, but can I interrupt on one thing here?
Go ahead.
It's a straw man, or certainly wrong, to say that Nader and the Green Party were solely or even mainly responsible for that effect in 2000. That would be wrong. It's not what I say, or really pretty much anybody says.
Oh, no, but Dan, many people say that. Many, many, many people say that, unfortunately.
They're wrong, in my opinion. Okay, you can argue with them. But when Nader and everybody else says he had no effect, he was not a participant in that result, he had no influence, which I've heard a lot of Nader people say, and they're friends of mine otherwise. These are people I otherwise respect, but they are saying something that's not just mistaken. It's ridiculous.
I would never say, it had no effect.
Yeah.
My argument, all I wanted to bring up is explain for people. So Florida was the deciding, to give one specific example, is Florida in that election was the deciding state. More Democrats in Florida voted for the Republican George W. Bush than voted for Nader.
They had their head up their ass.
Yes. And so Democrats need to run better candidates, and they need to stop voting for Republicans, because Democrats, they're not just voting for Republicans like apparently they did back then for George W. Bush in Florida, but they're essentially nominating Republicans because Joe Biden is practically a Republican. In fact, the beginning of his career, he was advertising himself as practically a Republican.
Can Joe Biden lose this election?
Say that again?
Can Joe Biden lose this election?
Can Joe Biden lose this election? Oh, I think so, for sure. It's a chance.
Possible,
yes.
Right? Okay, it's possible. How bad would that be, I have to ask? And would it be just a little bad, or regrettable, or really very bad?
Unfortunately, I know the consequence of this election, no matter what, is going to be bad.
Am I wrong in thinking I'm talking to a Green Party voter here?
I did a vote for Jill Stein. I did, and it was, again, Dan, I'm in D.C., so it's a way to have a little impact. It was my tiny, tiny little impact.
Who would you have voted for in Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania?
Honestly, I may not have voted. I mean, let's face it, I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. I did not vote for Donald Trump because I couldn't bring myself to do that.
Is it fair to say you would find it very hard to bring yourself to ask anyone to vote for Hillary Clinton in Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania?
It was, yeah. And so I never did do that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I did encourage people to vote in a swing state to have their voice heard.
Why?
Because I was promoting third-party candidates because I think we need third parties, and this is nuanced, I know, but we need third parties. They play an important role, and I think our country would be better off if they played a larger role, especially when you look at that freaking debate that we just had, Dan. If you want to improve the terribleness, the horrible display that we just saw in the debates, well, one way to do that is you open the debates to third-party candidates. And let's face it, that's the only way third-party candidates are going to have a chance at ever, winning anything significant, is if they get a chance to be in the debate so people can hear their points of view and hear their arguments. I made some videos about Jill Stein and the Green Party in 2016. Most people aren't familiar with the Green Party. And unfortunately, was the case with whistleblowers, they were smeared relentlessly. And so part of what I did was debunk many of the smears. Although I did encourage everybody, I said, vote for who you want to vote for. But if you live in a swing state, it makes sense to vote for, the Republican or Democrat.
Okay, those states are all in play as swing states this time as well.
I know. That's why I said I still can't tell people to vote for. It's so hard because
Matt.
Yeah.
Very clear. No, I mean, if I may say.
Yeah.
I haven't had a discussion like this.
Yeah.
In an interview in years. I've been on Zoom a lot, and I haven't had this discussion with anyone on ever. Okay, so can we go on? And that's why I say I absolutely feel free. Let's just have the discussion. Okay,
yes.
Whether it comes out or not.
For sure.
Okay, now on someone that I have great respect for, and because I said I haven't even had this discussion with people that I know I disagree with, because they're friends of mine, and I would jeopardize the friends. And in fact, I don't expect I could change their opinion because that's been my experience with some others. So let me mention one that I have very great respect for, and does wonderful work. Very, very, very good. I'm sure you would esteem him if I mention. Who said to me in 2008, and this sums it up, I can't imagine urging anyone to vote for Barack Obama. Okay. He's not a Republican, but okay. So that's the same, I think you feel it's the same spirit.
Except even worse, Dan, because Barack Obama, he said he was for single payer. Joe Biden said he has suggested he will veto Medicare for all.
You may believe that stuff, but I didn't.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you why I didn't.
Uh-huh.
Barack Obama said when he was fighting Hillary Clinton in the primaries, he was positioning himself to her left in the primaries. So when Feingold in the Senate said, I will filibuster against any bill that gives the telephone companies immunity from prosecution for the surveillance, which the Times had revealed in 2005. We basically know what Snowden documented later, but they didn't have the documents. Okay, so now it's a big issue. They've tried to get a hold on this, and Congress has passed various things that essentially legalize all this, and all you're left with is the possibility of prosecuting the companies for participating in this unconstitutional and criminal action, okay? So the bill comes up on FISA, adjusting the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that would immunize the companies from doing that.
The communications corporations.
Right. So you have no accountability at all. So Obama says, I will join Feingold in this filibuster. See? I will join Feingold in the filibuster. Hillary does not say that. So later in the campaign, Obama is going to be the nominee. The bill comes up. Feingold filibusters. Obama not only does not filibuster, he votes to end the filibuster. All right? So that was a pretty good signal as to where we were going with Barack Obama. And of course, in the end, he votes for the bill that he had earlier said he would filibuster. All right? So at that point, I said, okay, what can we hope for from Obama? But I did have one big thing in mind. I thought Obama sounds to me a lot less likely to go to war with Iran than McCain. All right? That was about all I hoped for from him. And actually, I got what I wanted there, right? The Iran deal. Would McCain have done that? Would Romney have done that? Trump says the worst deal ever made, which he gets out of and so forth. All right. That's what I got. And some other things, a few things. a number of regulations. Did we get a lowering in emissions? No. But did we get regulations that would, encourage regulations on car emissions, regulations on toxics, regulations on this? All the things that Trump is stripping out were Obama. Why is he stripping them? Two reasons. They're Obama, and two, the oil companies. They limit emissions. Now, here's an irony. The oil companies aren't eager to change those regulations because they're so obvious and so necessary, and people like Jerry Brown are pushing them so strongly. They can't be sure that the next president will come back in and put them in. So they're not eager to emit more fuel from the cars. Because if they change their designs the way Trump wants, they'll have to change them again.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, Trump said, no, you can't have it. You can't have those regulations. He's stripping them all out. So that was how much I expected from Obama. But against McCain, no. So when my friend said, what I said to him was, and here we now come down to it, in the non-swing states, it doesn't matter. They're defined by your little vote and the vote of progressives who are a minority. They don't make the difference. These things are not going to make it. Where progressives can make a difference is in the swing states because by definition, they are very close. And so a small minority, if it votes one way or the other, can make the difference. So our progressive votes we are a minority. They really only count in swing states. And you can identify those states, whether it's 6, 8, 12, not much beyond that. And it's not usually that many. 6 or 8, 10. That's where it matters. So I said, okay, this is what I said to Nader in 2000. Campaign hard in the safe states, in the other states, and I will campaign for you. And a lot of other people will campaign for you because I totally agree with your platform, as I said publicly in various places, except on one thing, where Nader says, vote for me in a swing state. Don't agree. But on the others, I agree with the platform. Well, and now you will get beyond the 5% limit. You'll get federal funding if you do it that way. But if you keep campaigning in Florida, no, please don't. So we got Bush. And now
but it wasn't Nader who lost Florida. That was the Democrats who lost Florida. More Democrats voted for Bush.
That's helped. Also.
More. It wasn't just helped. More Democrats voted for Bush.
Fine. Okay. Gore lost thanks to the Supreme Court by 500 votes. 500 votes. Nader got 90,000 votes in Florida. Now, that's not to say that most of his votes, if he had not campaigned, or if he'd said what I wanted him to say, between these two turkeys, if you're in a non-safe state, vote against both of them by voting for me. If you are in Florida, vote to get the worst guy out. By voting Democrat, not just Republican or Democrat, by vote Democrat. That's what he could have said. Now come right up to the current situation. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, still in play, very much so. In each one of those states, Jill Stein's vote was larger than the margin of victory.
Well, but see, you're not taking into account Gary Johnson's votes, who would normally be Republican, who
the thing is,
yeah,
contribute. I'm not saying whether it's, of course, 2016, how many things? First, you have Hillary, to start with as your candidate. You have Comey, whom I think was, Comey was very influential on this. Russia, to a degree that we don't know, they were trying, I don't know. Jill Stein, though, telling people not to vote for, and Gary Johnson, yes, he helped, but so did Trump. They're on more or less the same, not really on.
Gary Johnson, Republicans voting for Gary Johnson was more significant than any, progressives voting for Jill Stein because Gary Johnson got more votes. But
they vote, yes. But who did he take those votes away from?
Primarily the Republican candidate, Trump.
Yes. So that was good.
I guess here's the thing. Here's the way I look at it is, I don't think, because third parties tend to balance each other out with the Libertarian Party and the Green Party.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Generally. No, I'm not saying, I know what you're saying, but because they tend to balance each other out, I think what we should be focusing on, the best strategy, is to push the Democrats to offer progressives something to vote for, rather than a threat of a Republican. No, give us something to vote for. And here's another this is very important that I think most people just don't understand, or they just won't accept it. They're just denying it. Most third-party voters, they're voting that way because they would not vote any other way. And now I understand you want to convince third-party voters to vote for a Democrat, but I think.
Can we go right to that point though? Right now, your point.
Go ahead.
The argument. The problem with third party here. Have you ever heard the term Duverger's law?
I have not.
I've only run into one group of political science class that I once talked to who had, but it's not hard to find. A more obvious thing to put into the web is the following question. What does it mean to be a two-party country? Is the U.S. a two-party country? Why is the U.S. a two-party country? Or why has a third party never come close to winning in this country since 1860, after 1860? Why is that?
Well, yeah.
The reason is not what the people who don't look this up think. The Duverger's law, is not at all self-evident. The idea is, and it doesn't hold everywhere in the world, but it holds very well in the U.S., which is that where you have single-member districts where only one person can win, not a slate, and plurality voting, where they call it first past the post, winner take all, not proportional representation, not ranked choice.
Yeah. What we need is ranked choice. That's the solution.
Wins that single seat. That leads to strong two-party systems where a third party. Now, that's only a handful of countries in the world have that system. We are one of them. Mm-hmm. With other systems, you get multiple parties, which there's many arguments in favor of them. But with the other system where you rank choice vote or proportional representation, they call it, various things, if you want to get out of it, you can. You change the voting system.
Yes.
Necessarily easy, just like the Electoral College. Everybody knows the Electoral College is in an anachronism. It's anti-democratic, and it favors the rural areas, and it used to favor the slave areas, which are pretty much the same rural areas that are racist to this day. So that's why it's hard to get rid of the Electoral College.
Well, in the case of the Electoral College, that's written in our Constitution, right? So the issue with ranked choice voting, we don't have that hurdle. The only hurdle to ranked choice voting is that the Democrats and Republicans, they like being able to point and blame third parties for their failures.
Oh, no. Pardon me. By the way, did the Democrats blame Jill Stein?
Yes, absolutely.
Zero. No.
Fine. Oh, I will, Dan. That's okay.
Give me an element. They blamed Russia. They preferred to blame Russia.
And Jill Stein.
Comey, which is also true, part of it. Jill Stein got off, I would say,
no.
I blame her. Blame her. I blame her. And they could have. And of course, they did blame Nader, yes, in 2000.
Again, you went on for a while and a lot of good stuff, good food for thought. Let me respond. Can I respond to some of it?
I will. Go on for 20 minutes. Yeah, I went on for more than 20 minutes. Go on. I really will not interrupt you. Really.
Okay. So what's interesting is the reason we're together today, what brought us together, is we share the concern of growing tyranny in the United States, and we share a concern about the future of the First Amendment, which is very much under threat. And we both understand that, unfortunately, the chances and the forces are against Assange in the Assange case. But it's still worth fighting back because there's a chance that we can successfully fight extradition, and there's a chance that we can fight the prosecution if he is extradited to the U.S. So what I find interesting, just one thing I find interesting, is I see the same thing with wanting a third party and the need for a third party, because these two parties in this two-party system are constantly moving more and more right, more and more authoritarian. So I feel it's still worth fighting for that. And I know you're not arguing against it entirely. You're just arguing against people in swing states voting third party. I just can't go so far as to shame people for voting third party when they can't bring themselves to vote otherwise. So we disagree there. Now, and here's the thing. You say that in our history, two parties is just how it is. You say that's just how it is. But you did mention that there are exceptions. And one of those exceptions, maybe it's the only exception, I don't know, you tell me, but the Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans, that was a third party. Now they're a major party. So it can happen. And I mean, just imagine arguing against a third party back then. Could you really argue against Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans, fighting for abolishing slavery? So these are reasons why I think a third-party movement is still important. But I do agree with you that everybody should consider their vote even more if they're in a swing state. Totally agree with you. And I'm not disagreeing with you there. Now, in order to ever have an incentive for these laws to change to allow a ranked choice voting system, there needs to be a threat that people will not vote for a Democrat or a Republican, instead vote for a third party. If people don't do that, then we never will have ranked choice voting. Let me mention some things that really concern me about Biden as far as climate change. I think climate change is a huge, huge issue. And so it's not irrational for people to be voting just on that issue. But one of the reasons why I'm incredibly discouraged with Biden, I already mentioned several, with Obama, opened the Arctic to drilling, increased fossil fuel production and emissions. In addition to that, and this got no press, by the way, Dan, I'm the only person that covered this, no press. So in his interview with Al Gore, it just states lies, climate change lies. He said, quote, more carbon is absorbed from the atmosphere in the Amazon, locked in the ground, than all the carbon emitted, all the pollution emitted in the United States on a daily basis. That is totally false, utterly false. The U.S. emits 5 billion tons of CO2 a year, which is more than twice the amount that the Amazon absorbs in a year. So it's just totally false. And that is a fossil fuel industry talking point that, the Amazon is balancing all our carbon emissions. That's totally false. And you have Joe Biden saying this in an interview with Al Gore, Mr. Climate Change, Mr. Inconvenient Truth. Nobody corrects him on it. Al Gore doesn't correct him on it. Nobody in the media corrects him, even mentions this. They cover this interview just as a headline, like, Al Gore supports Biden. Nobody actually listened to the interview and talked about how Joe Biden is pitching fossil fuel industry talking points. So, and that's just one example. And that brings me to one of the biggest concerns I have with the Joe Biden presidency. And that is, Dan, answer me this. Who is more dangerous? Who's the more dangerous president? The president who the media is constantly covering, constantly critiquing, constantly fact-checking, constantly pressuring, constantly calling out, or a president who the media does not call out when they lie? And I fear that is what a Biden presidency would be. What do you think, Dan?
Okay. That position was taken by my friend Julian Assange, who, as you may notice, I'm doing everything I can to help at this point.
Well, hold on. Julian Assange did not take the position that Trump would be better than Hillary Clinton because the media would be more critical of him. I believe he based that on the fact that Hillary Clinton voted for the Iraq War, and Trump was giving rhetoric to say that he was against the Iraq War and that he would not start a war.
Wait, actually, I'm sorry to say, it was painful to me, but I read a long account put out by Micah Lee, who is on the Freedom of the Press Foundation board recently, that showed out the tweets that in 2015 now, well before Trump was a major candidate, but he was in the running, but not, he wasn't dominant at that point. And Julian put out several tweets to the effect that it would be the point you just made, actually, less dangerous to have a Republican who had opposition from the Democrats. Now, of course, in the Senate and the House, that opposition doesn't weigh a whole lot unless you have a majority. So you have to presume somehow a Republican president with a Democratic majority in the House and Senate, which is not what we've had. But he said that would be better than having a Democrat who, doesn't get any criticism from the Democrats, from us, from the progressives, but should have a healthy. It's what you just said.
Not just criticism from progressives, but criticisms from the left in general, from the mainstream media.
It's the point you were just making, am I right?
Yes.
And I think, in effect, that's been tested. For a variety of reasons, Julian did not want Hillary to win. And is in our system, as I've been saying, he was helpful to Trump, and that's why Trump said, "I love WikiLeaks." You remember that? Mm-hmm. And with reason. He had reason to say that, even though he's prosecuting him now. So, but Trump turns on a lot of people. He likes us.
Yeah, that is you asked why 10% of Bernie voters voted for Trump, or just part of the appeal that some people have towards him. I mean, I know he's a fraud. I know he can't be trusted. But the thing is, the fact that he is so disloyal, I think people voted for him hoping that, if he's only loyal to himself, that's clear. So maybe he will turn on Goldman Sachs. Maybe he will be disloyal to the military-industrial complex.
Hasn't done it yet. We've been waiting for 4 years.
That's true. But he'll give people just a little something. He called out the military-industrial complex and corruption. He did. He did.
Use the term military-industrial.
He did. He did.
Give me a reference on that one.
He did. I'll look it up. Right? He did.
No. You say just recently. Just recently, he did say something about they want wars. No, it was quoted. It was saying that's true.
Yeah.
I'm the one that talks about these wars that are 19 years and people are just there. And don't kid yourself, you do have a military-industrial complex. They do like war. I say, I want to bring our troops back home. The place went crazy. They want to keep, you have people here in Washington. They never want to leave. I say, you know what I'll do? I'll leave a couple of hundred soldiers behind. But if it was up to them, they'd bring thousands of soldiers in. Someday people will explain it.
Well, this is an example.
You do have a group, and they call it the military-industrial complex. They never want to leave. They always want to fight. No, I don't want to fight.
You're right.
I mean, that's.
You started on that doesn't mean the defense budget will be any less.
Yes. And you're right. And Biden said he would increase Trump's defense budget.
There is an issue where I do not see an advantage to either Biden or the Democrats. It's one of my major issues. Mm-hmm. Also, nuclear war. These are the two that are my personal issues. Climate, I'm terribly concerned about, but I am total layman on it. I know nothing about it. But on these two issues, unfortunately, there isn't a big difference between them, actually. And it's deplorable. It's terrible. I have to look at other things. Now, in 2016, there was less reason to believe, much less, that Trump would get us into a war with Russia than Hillary Clinton. That's not a small matter. Hillary was talking about getting us into war in Syria and possibly the Ukraine.
Yep.
That was a very serious matter. That was I could see that as a reason, that one on itself. Why is Trump so sane about Russia, saying, why can't we be friends with Russia? Why can't we make deals with Russia? I didn't care what his reasons were for saying that. I think they're almost surely corrupt in various ways, deals and maybe blackmail, whatever. But I don't care what the reasons. I wish Hillary had those reasons. I don't want war with Russia. Absolutely not. Nevertheless, I went against Trump. In this case, you don't have it. They're pretty much the same. Am I sure that Biden won't get us into any conflict? No, I'm not. And I don't think he'll get into war with Iran, and I'm very worried about that with Trump.
I don't want to fight, but you do have situations like Iran. You can't let them have nuclear weapons. You just can't let that happen.
Oh, let me mention one thing between us here, okay? Joe Biden, of the 20 Democratic candidates, he was pretty near the bottom for me. First, let me say, of the 20, I would take any of them over Trump. Unless, as you say, it's better, unless it were the case, that it's better to have a Trump in, for building a party, for building a movement, for having opposition. If you want to say that Trump is better, then he's better than any of them, let's say. I would say that I would have taken any of them over Trump. And I imagine I would be working just as hard when it comes to the swing states because of my perception of Trump right now. And the Republican Party, it isn't just Trump. He's made it in his image to a large extent. Okay. I would have thought that Biden should be disqualified as a national influence by his great support for the Iraq War.
Me too.
I would like to have a world in which that would rule you out.
Yeah.
That's the world I live in because enough people don't agree with me on that.
It didn't get enough attention.
He put Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. How about that?
A conservative
by
justice.
Refusing people who would have supported Anita Hill testify. He didn't let 4 people testify who would have shown that she was not just making this up stuff. And a lot of other things. To repeat, I have never heard a left criticism of Biden that I didn't agree with. Now, I am happily surprised at how much he has changed in the last 6 months or so under not just voting for funds, but Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez chose to work with him on his working groups. Will people follow what his program is, his platform, his working group? No, they don't. That's not guaranteed. But it is hopeful that that he went in that direction. It sounds as though he has some influence. Let me bring up something now to take a total turn here.
Okay.
You mentioned that we're working for Julian Assange to be released. What's the chance of that? I would have said close to zero, that's despite the fact that I'm working for it in the way that you're working for it. I'm generally working for a long time for things that I think it will take a miracle to achieve. My only hope is that miracles do happen. I think in the sense of things that we didn't foresee, but they were seen as impossible. The idea of the Berlin Wall coming down, you may be too young to say fully appreciate. How old are you?
I'm 35. I just turned 35.
And how old were you in 89?
4 years old. So I was 4 years old when it came down.
Really, 4?
Yes.
Parents probably didn't even take you in front of the TV as I did my child and say, Michael say, remember this.
Yeah, all my knowledge of the Berlin is from like documentaries and art,
Now, so my point is here simply this. That was something that in 80, 82, 84, 85, if that came up, it would have said, No, that's impossible. That's like not landing on the moon, but the moon turning out to be green cheese after all. You know, Mandela coming to power in South Africa without violence, essentially. There had been violence in the past, etc. Without a violent revolution, that was impossible. So these are two good things that happened that were impossible. And so I know that, I can work for something that's impossible. And it can be worth doing it. Miracles can happen. And you and I, everything we're doing is against the odds, So when you say, yes, it's small odds for a third party, that's true. And when I say it's small odds for Biden or his successor to save us from 4 degrees increase, it really is small odds. That's what we're working for. Yeah. The only point I've been making in this discussion, which I've never had, with anybody, is there's small odds and then there's real small odds. In this country, a third party growing up to be a contender, I'm afraid, is not in the cards. You're free to disagree with me, but do look up on the subject. Mm-hmm. And 1860 could happen again, but not this year. And not in 4 years either.
And I just want to say, we really are in agreement. I understand the only way that a third party could ever be a real contender is if we institute ranked choice voting. The only place we do disagree is, I think, that in order to get ranked choice voting, third parties have to be some kind of a threat to take away potential votes for Democrats and Republicans.
I want progressives to take over the Democratic Party. Impossible. The way that right-wingers took over the Republican Party.
Yeah, I agree, Dan, and that's why I backed Bernie. That was my example that I could give people who were done with the Democratic Party and were all in for Greens and just totally done. And I could give them that example. Well, look at Bernie. But he failed.
If I had the same hopes for a third party that you do, which I would have earlier on, before I read this stuff about the history and why we don't have a third party. It's not just because they keep them out of debates and they are mean to them and they have more money and so forth. It turns out that with our voting system, third parties don't have a chance because people see that their vote either has no effect or serves only the cause of the other party. The world depends. The world depends. It's got to sound like hyperbole, but that's not where I'm putting it. The world demands a better president of the United States than Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in 2024 and ever after. They may or may not get it. We have a real crack at it because Bernie showed the way here that, it was possible to win. It was not impossible for him to win. Bernie's not perfect by any means, any more than you and I are. And he's not perfect as a politician, any way you look at it. I haven't found anything to disagree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez yet. Maybe tomorrow there will be something. But I haven't noticed that she honestly is my candidate in 2024. But does that mean she'll be able to change all these things to keep that oil in the ground? No, that won't be sufficient remotely. But it's necessary. It's necessary to get somebody who's at least trying to do that. And is it likely? No, it's unlikely. What that means is the survival of civilization as we know it, with all its faults and its benefits, is unlikely. And it's unlikely in this century, in my belief. It's unlikely, but it's worth fighting for, non-violently. There is 2 ways, I think, of our not getting the presidents we need. One way is violence. That gets us in the wrong direction, I believe. It makes the Trumps more likely, and it makes them stronger, and it gives them almost unanimous support. It's really wrong. Third party isn't like that, but I think it's in my opinion, a dead end, as long as we have the voting system we have. To rethink whether you could get yourself to encourage people to vote for Biden in a swing state, knowing how difficult that would be for you, and how you have principles and tactics in order to say, I don't feel like it, and that's the wrong thing to do. Think again, and let's talk about it. We don't have to talk on television. I'd love to talk with you at any length.
Cool. Should I wrap it? I have so many questions, but how would you go about getting ranked choice voting then?
Getting what?
Ranked choice voting.
Oh, that's well, I'll tell you, very few people know that it's an issue. I think it is worth getting, absolutely. You're not going to get it unless people know it's something worth fighting for. You don't get it by voting for a third party. You do not get it.
Well,
you have to know that you're trying to get ranked choice voting.
But, okay, now I think this is really interesting because you say, and you're correct, one of the biggest problems and barriers to getting ranked choice voting is that people are not aware of it.
But they don't know what they're talking about.
But one way to raise awareness, I don't know of a better way, it may be the only way, is if there is an issue and controversy over third-party voting.
No. I'll just we can discuss this, and let's not do it forever.
Okay, yeah.
But I want to say very firmly, you don't get there by voting third party. I want to say that very strongly. And because that's basically done in ignorance. You're not spreading the word of what's needed. If you spread the word, you'd say, third party can't succeed unless we get this.
Okay, so here, I'll make a pact with you. I will definitely share your great arguments for Joe Biden, even though you're not a big fan of Joe Biden's history. And when you go out and when you talk about why people need to vote Joe Biden, tell them why we need ranked choice voting too.
Yes, that's fair enough.
Cool. All right. Daniel Ellsberg, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, great. Okay, right. Good work, Pat. Someone that I respect and whose work I admire. I've seen your other clips here. Very good stuff.